Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Dev Podcast, where we dive deep into everything related to software development. Our focus is on learning and exploring how to improve our development processes and also engineering productivity through leveraging AI and data-driven strategies. I'm your host, Henry, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Anmol. How are you doing, Anmol?
Hey, Henry. Good morning. I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here for our next episode of the DevLogue podcast.
Wonderful. So today we have a special guest who's a longtime friend of mine. We connected over a CTO community called 7CTOs. Shout out to ETM, Brittany, and all the amazing folks at 7CTOs. Our guest is Erik Birkfeld, partner at ScaleTech Consulting. Erik specializes in coming in as a fractional CTO and then really helping engineering teams function better. I recently learned about his successful transformation project, and I'm excited to share that with our community. So, Erik, it's great to have you here. Could you start by telling us a bit about yourself and what ScaleTech Consulting does? Um, Also, what it's like to come in as a fractional CTO. What does the collaboration pattern look like?
Yeah, sure. Henry, Anmol, it's a pleasure. Thank you both for having me on. Happy Friday to you both. We have a nice weekend ahead of us, so hopefully you're doing something fun. Yeah, I've had a long trajectory. I got into biz in the mid '90s as a developer, and around the turn of 2000, I realized that it's a young man's game, and I didn't have the grit to stay up until 2 in the morning, consistently improving my craft. I got lazy, but I realized what I did have was a strong skill in connecting with people and being able to articulate the business direction to the technical side of the house and the technical side to the business side. And I also realized at that time that engineering and the people in engineering were a bit of a commodity. And when I saw that happening, that's when I saw a lot of burnout. I saw a lot of hurry up and wait, pivots, disregard for the health of the engineering department. And I realized that what I could contribute into this side and in this industry was care and health around our process and around our engineers so that our teams were actually producing more value, working smarter and not just working harder, and that um, there was a care for them, less burnout, less attrition, that kind of. And so that's what I've fashioned the last 25 years or 24 years of my life has been devoted to coming into organizations and helping them build that sensible and healthy team so that we could continue to produce results for our customers.
So, Eric, that's interesting. So, question for you on that. Do you think that the pandemic and everything around that with virtual teams, do you think that also helped kind of accelerate that mindset or that journey as far as, hey, let's really take care of our people, let's have mental health is important, burnout, all of those sorts of things. Do you think that kind of accelerated some of this, what you were talking about?
On Tuesdays and Thursdays, yes. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, no. So, I think it's a mixed bag. I think that what the pandemic did for us gave us a lot of freedom. I think that coming into the office for a lot of people in our industry is difficult sometimes, right? I think that there's a lot of isolation that went on in the pandemic too. So, I also think I've always said this, when you want to work remote, like, so even back in the days before COVID, when, certain people are like, hey, can I work from home on Fridays or Thursdays, or can I have split days? I'd always be like, listen, we're big boys and girls. If you know what you have to get done, get it done. But working remote is a gift. Back in the day, it was a gift, right? So it's almost like you have to be there 110% of the time.
Mm.
Um, Now, fast forward to now, I think that there's a lot of abuse going on in our organizations for our remote workers, right? I think we're all expected to be working from the time the sun goes up until the time the sun goes down. Um, and I think that becomes a problem. I think there's a lot of anxiety, and I think with Slack, and when you hear your Slack notification go off upstairs and you're downstairs, you have these oh crap moments where like, oh, what fire, what shoe fell, you know, what service stopped running. So I think it depends on the organization. I think if you can create a harmony with remote, and you can let your employees know, like, dude, you don't have to be, I'll 911 you when it's an emergency. Um, you don't have to be so slave to the Slack channel, or or the Teams, whatever you're using. So, um, yeah, I hope that
So
answers
Eric,
it.
I love your job definition for CTO, which is, providing care to engineers and then ensuring health of your team, right? So when you first come into an engineering organization, I imagine you're probably faced with like a behemoth of complexity. So where do you even get started in providing care to engineers? Do you have a framework or step-by-step guide for debugging engineering processes?
Sure. So Scott Graves, my business partner, and I, we like to think of ourselves, if you remember the movie Pulp Fiction, we're the Winston Wolf, right? We're the fixer. We come in, and the first thing we do is just go get me a coffee, right? I wouldn't be here if this was working and if it was right. So let me do what I got to do, and that's forensics, right? So we do several things, right? We talk to the team. We look we look at like the telltales. Like, I want to look at the commit logs. I want to look at some of the code analysis. I want to see the last 5 or 6 sprints. Show me what got carried over. I want to look at, how do things come into your sprints? Like, I want to look at requirement stocks and change logs, and I want to start to sit in some of the meetings that you have, right? So we're a fly on the wall for the first couple weeks. We like to do things in sprints as well, right? So we like to take 2 weeks to really gain understanding and get information, and then we like to take that time afterwards to kind of put together a plan. So how who's your team? What's the org structure? How are they communicating? What are the stand-ups like? All just those kind of front line things that you want to look at, because it's a lot of pattern matching, right? It's not so anomalous for these your teams to be sputtering or be hemorrhaging, feature scope creep, not missing deadlines, estimates are off. Like, there's usually the reason that that's going on is kind of similar amongst all the companies we go to. There is nuance with the people, and it allows us to quickly ascertain, like, where do we have to do our best work. Data is a big thing, right? And I think that one of the biggest problems that I see in not just our industry, but a lot of industries, our personal lives, we don't make data-driven decisions. A lot of the times we make gut decisions, and sometimes you're right, sometimes you're not. But when you do that, when you're not making data-driven decisions, you can't truly continuously improve, because what's your baseline and where's your high water mark? So Scott and I come in, and the first thing we try to do is approach this: where's the data? Where isn't the data? And where can we apply data quickly so that we can start to kind of lower the water, find out where the sharp rocks are, and then get that tide back up and lift everybody up?
So Eric, do you think there should be kind of a healthy balance though between data-driven decisions and more of the gut feeling or I guess emotional decisions? Because I've seen this kind of happen in other industries, whether you look at sports or I come from the sales or marketing side, where historically those have all been emotional or kind of gut feeling decisions. Now that there's been a focus on metrics, and if you look at sports, sabermetrics, or if you look at sales, there's been a big focus on metrics over the last few years. But I feel like many organizations have over rotated to the other side, where now it's strictly based on metrics, and those become more important, right? And then you end up managing to the metrics rather than managing to the real results, whether that's sales or whether that's if it's sports, wins or losses on the field. So I think in those industries, there should be a happy medium between the two. Do you find the same thing in the development world, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a one size fits all. When you think about the agile philosophy, and it's about people, right? And it's about negotiations, right? Not contracts. It's about looking at what you have to make decisions, and sometimes data is the right divining rod for that. But data can also box you in. And so I think that, yeah, there absolutely has to be a healthy balance there. What I think is the common thread through that is just communication, right? So if you've got gut decisions made in a vacuum, you could have, there'd be dragons. If you make driven decisions in a vacuum, it's the same, right? So as long as you're communicating and you have the right people that are in those meetings or in those, kind of like part of that process where you have to make that decision, I think that you can choose collectively to either say, hey, this feels good, let's go this direction, or I'm not sure. Let's look at our data, right? We look at this with developer metrics, right? I think that people, like everything, people tend to take things too seriously, too by the book sometimes, and that also boxes in, right? When we look at developer metrics, you can game metrics, right?
Yeah.
And you can also vilify based on metrics, right? Sometimes metrics aren't necessarily the right casting the right light on things. And so I think, yeah, there's a healthy balance there. And I think as long as you understand what your true goal is and what your true north is, I think then, if you have a good team, you can kind of vacillate between data and desire.
Hmm. So Eric, one question we got a lot is, once the CTO set up the metrics, the question is what's next? So can you walk us through an example of, how did you, set up metrics, measuring the baseline and then walk through this, transformational journey? Yeah.
Sure. So I'm gonna throw some acronyms out because we live a life of acronyms. But Scott and I, when we go into a company, we look at three real baseline metrics for us, right? The first one and the most important one is the NTV, right? That is the new technology. When we look at new technology value, we're looking at like what are we delivering to our customer, and is this ROI? Is this make the spend in engineering appropriate? The other two we look at are KTLO, and that's keeping the lights on. And that's our drag. That's the money we're spending on bug fixes. That's the money we're spending on tech debt. That's the money we're spending on click ops, like all these things that are like lowering our opportunity to deliver new technology value. And in the middle, there's MTB, and that's making things better. That's the data we look at and the metrics we look at for how much are we contributing to our engineering department and our process to buy down our KTLO and increase our NTV. Right off the bat, those are the three things that we institute and this is how we roll these out in metrics. We actually, using story points or using percentages of like how many tickets in a sprint fall into these categories, we're able to understand the health of a sprint as far as it's contributing to the value to the customer, or the health of the sprint as far as like we're just stuck in bug fix land, right? We can't get ahead of ourselves because all we're doing is keeping the lights on. And so by giving points to each of these, we immediately put these in play for our teams so that at the a slash command in Slack, I can tell you immediately where my team is as far as like, are they delivering new technology value or are they still KTLO? And then I can also then unpack that further for the what's next, right? So what's next to me is what's the conversation that I have to have with my stakeholders? When my stakeholder says, "Hey, Eric, we haven't delivered any value," I go in and say, "Okay, yeah, that why? Because we've been for the last 6 weeks, all we've been doing is bug fixing." Well, why is that? Well, because we have too much new technology value that's in the hopper. There's no prioritization on it. And you haven't given us enough time to kind of fix our infrastructure or fix our CI/CD and so that we can deliver faster and safer. And so these are the conversations. The what next is really that becomes the negotiation. And where I can't argue with data is in that scenario. So if we are, it's garbage in, garbage out. So if we are addressing everything that's coming in correctly, we're attributing the properties to it properly, like saying this is new technology value, this is keeping the lights on, this is our engineering team making things better. Then I can easily see what state I'm in and what state I've come from. And we're constantly trying to get to the point where we are only delivering new technology value, or at least 80% of my every sprint is NTV. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is fascinating. So for teams who have too high of keeping the lights on or KTLO, what would be some of the common pitfalls or like common strategies that you can work on to help them get that number down?
Yeah. So a couple lifetimes ago, when I was working at MindTouch, it's a startup in downtown San Diego, my good friend Steve Bjorg, who's the CTO there, we came up with a strategy where we gave ourselves a full month, twice a year, to buy down tech debt. What we did is we said, hey, everybody, we in these next two sprints, we are not going to be delivering any new technology value. All we're going to do is allow the developers to actually come up with what the making things better. So they'd be saying, hey, this version of, you know, JavaScript is old and we need to bring it up. Or, hey, these ClickOps are out of hand and we've got too much manual process for deployment and it's costing us too much time. Or we need to, do some work here that's going to make things better. And so that's how we would do it in MindTouch, where we actually had that dedicated time. Where I am now in the company I'm at now, which is a company called Dandy, where we do online rep management for SMBs and mid-market restaurants, automotive, hospitality. When we came in, what we did was we realized, like, architecturally, what got us there isn't going to get us, what got us here isn't going to get us there. Right. So we're a 0 to 4 startup. We're just hit the fourth year. We're profitable. We're crushing it. But when we looked at, the architecture, there was some bubble gum and duct tape. And so what we try to do is, one, hire the right people. So we get team leads in there that have been there, done that understand the pitfalls, can look back, can see forensically, where we're off, and we give them, control to say and empower them to say, hey, this needs to be fixed. We need to put a brighter light over here because this is costing us time and energy. And we use the team to do this, right? It's not always just the CTO coming in going, this is what I feel, or this is what I've done in the past. Like, I'm not in the weeds anymore. Right? And I need my team that's in the weeds to be able to bring this up and see this and say this. And then I need to go negotiate this with the stakeholders, because inevitably you're going to have, a team, a CEO or a board that's going to say, no, we gotta keep pressing forward. We gotta go. And yes, but if we do, we may hit a wall.
Hmm.
We're seeing that a lot with AI right now. Right? It's a land grab. We're in the prompt business. We're spinning up ML ops, and we're doing, a lot of testing on prompts because we do a lot of sentiment analysis in reputation management. And, there is always an urge to quickly change prompts. But if you're not truly testing the prompts on a sample set of hundreds and thousands of records, not just 10, 50 times, you're never going to get true results. And so being able to have the freedom to not only have a hypothesis, but test the hypothesis, especially in a KTLO situation, um, you get that freedom, and it really allows you to truly move forward in a much more dynamic and robust way.
Awesome. I want to touch more on your journey of productionizing LLMs in your application. But before that, I want to go back to the Dandy example. By any chance, do you remember what was the numbers like when you guys just came in, and what were the numbers, right now? And then what are the like maybe one or two things the developers chose to they come up with for to make things better, that really move the needle here?
Sure. So there weren't a lot of numbers when we came in. It was just kind of the usual tale. Hey, I don't know what my engineering team's doing. I don't know what we're delivering. And I think that And so when Scott and I approach a contract, we're always a two-punch combo. He is engineering and product, and I'm engineering and ops. And we kind of meet in the middle. And the first thing we saw was that the numbers are off because we don't really have a prioritized backlog. We don't have a good roadmap. We've got competing efforts that are is equally critical. And then when you have that and you don't have good requirements on that and acceptance criteria, well, then the engineering team kind of, well, what do we do? And where's the why? And so you get skunk works, you get stuff done with assumption. We have a disparate team that's kind of distributed all over the globe. The numbers reflect in the lack of communication. And so when we came in, the first thing is to get those numbers. So we had almost a zero, right? It was, I would say, if anything, we were like top heavy on KTLO. We were trying to push features out. Features are coming out on shaky ground. We didn't have good testing. The tale, right? So we came in middle of the year last year, and I'd say by January we're a well-oiled machine. We've got 3 teams. We've got a platform team. We've got a team that handles our reputation management, which is our front end. It's the platform that our merchants go in. And then we have a review dispute team, which is working in the back on our prompts and pulling reviews from Google My Business for SMBs and mid-market companies. And then scoring those reviews, looking at the legitimacy, finding out where they violate terms of service with Google, and then we submit those and dispute those with Google automatically for all of our customers. Each one of these is a living, breathing, constantly updated and feature-rich part of the business. And so we get to look at the new technology value across 3 now, which before it was just completely obfuscated because it was just this giant, monolithic team. Breaking this team up, now we start to see these numbers, and we fluctuate, right? So our forward facing part of our application, we do a really good job. I'd say we're probably averaging 60 to 80% new technology value in every sprint, which is great. We, like every team, we still have rollover, but our rollover's down. We're keeping, we run a tight ship as far as we try to keep everything down to 1 to 2 day tasks. Everything. We
Mhm.
fight hard for that because when the 5 to 8 days, when your t-shirt sizes your XXLs, like that's completely nebulous. And when I hear something that's oh, this is going to take me, this is like an 8 in a story point, I'm like, well, what does that mean? Because I can't truly I can't truly task you or understand how you're tasked when I have something so big. So break it down. And by breaking those down, now we truly see that. Our platform team doesn't really deliver new technology value to our customers. Our platform team is internal. So our platform team is all making things better. And when our platform team's stuck in the KTLO, that's a bad thing. That means we've got, API issues, we've got service issues, we've got, latency on our apps, we've got, you know, stuff going south in AWS world, right? And so I'm constantly, and Scott's constantly leaning on them to make things better. So, our team lead, Chris, is doing a great job. He's over there constantly looking around corners to say, hey, can we get here? Can we get a better CI/CD pipeline? Can we do better, internally for ourselves so that we can continue to keep that number up? So to your question, where we were then, I'd give us a, flat line. And where we are now, I mean, we've got not only numbers that we feel good about that we can kind of evangelize outward, but the team feels good about it. And going back to the health of the team, if the team doesn't feel, Amal, you brought up sales, right? And I'm doing a lot of work in sales right now because my ops is kind of jumped the lanes from not only engineering, but I work across all the departments in Dandy right now, helping with ops and systems. And and I look at sales, it's really hard for you to be a salesperson if you don't believe in what you're selling, right? It's very hard for you to be an engineer, a thoughtful engineer, a craftsperson, because we are craftsperson people, right? When it comes down to it, you can't build a good craft if you don't believe in what you're building. And so when the numbers start to show progress and organization and communication, then the team feels much better about what they're doing.
And I think that could be a key point, right? Going back to that discussion of, that we should focus on the metrics, we should make data-driven improvements, but are we rotating too far in that direction, right? And what is that right balance? I think one way to look at it is, I mean, does it feel right, right? Is the team motivated? Is the team excited? Can we feel that things are getting better? And well, now we have the data to back that up. The data also backs that up. We were spending 80% of our time on keeping the lights on. The data is telling us now that's dropped to 40% or 30%. And the team can kind of sense it too, right? So there's that gut feeling, and then it's backed up by the metrics. I think when those two things are in harmony, that's when you really know that you're on track, right? If they're kind of out of whack, like, well, the metrics are telling us we're improving, but it doesn't really feel like that. It doesn't really seem like we are. Then maybe there's a disconnect. Maybe you're focusing too much on managing to the metrics, but it's not producing the right result.
Or the metrics are wrong, right? We're measuring the wrong thing. Um, I think, and so we don't get, so that we look at the efficacy of our development team again by how fast are we delivering? Are we delivering the right things? And are those getting into the wild safely? Right? That's a very clear path to success. Um, when the metrics tell us that we're doing good but we don't feel that, like, it's a very quick solve for us, right? We can go in quickly and look and say, hey, our sprint shows that we delivered a whole lot of work, but the customer is not getting value. Well, I'm actually at that point, I'm not looking at the engineering team, I'm looking at the product organization. Are you giving us product briefs to build, and are they the right thing? Or do they have the right acceptance criteria? Because we're building to what you want us to build. So I have ways to then look at other parts of the organization to see if the tail's wagging the dog.
So for our audience who's not familiar with how these metrics are calculated, Eric, do you think you can give a breakdown on how these three metrics, like new technology value, make things better, keeping the lights on, how they are calculated? Where are you getting the data?
Yeah, sure. It's super simple. So we use because we break everything down to 1 to 2 day tasks. It's very easy to extrapolate the amount of time and the allocation for each of our engineers. And so from a percentage, we look at the percentage of tickets that are in a sprint for a collective team and an individual. And we look at that percentage, based on property. So each ticket it's either a new technology value property, it's either an MTB, or it is a KTLO. We use story points for the velocity, and we kind of play with velocity. We don't really stay too stringent on the velocity, but we can look at the amount of points in a given sprint based on NTV or MTB, and it's hygiene. Really, it comes down to when we estimate 1 to 2 day tasks, making sure that we select the proper property for it, like, is it NTV, is it MTB, and that we make sure that the points that are allocated match the estimation. And that's it. It's super simple.
Awesome.
I will throw one other thing in there too. What we've really embraced is we do sprint goals. And so our goals, so I've hacked Jira, and this whole thing that we have, I built in Python, and it just is just a set of functions that mine information from Jira and Bitbucket or GitHub, and just put it all together and run these reports that come out in Slack every day. All right. And it comes out in the morning, and they're super actionable. When we can look at this quickly and we can see where there's smoke, so we know where there's going to be a fire. For the report that comes out at the top level, it's for product and the stakeholders to quickly look at the health of the sprint. Are we on track? Are the amount of tickets that are in there and their estimation, do they exceed the number of days that are left in the sprint? And are there any tickets in there that are, do we have multiple tickets in progress at once for any developer? We hate that. So you can't be working on two things at once. Are there any tickets in the sprint that haven't moved into progress or are in progress but haven't like moved out and have exceeded their estimate, right? So all these things that our engineering manager and our team leads can go, hey, Henry, what's going on? This ticket moved into progress 3 days ago and it was a 1 day task. Where are you? The sprint goals allow us to kind of roll up a bunch of tasks to push a given effort forward. And so for our sprint goal, like kind of thinking, the sprint goal ties directly to a product brief. So when we think about CTO, so I digress here for a second, but with 7 CTOs, our core methodology is the CTO levels. And these are all, functional areas within where your company sits based on size of your team and money you spend on your team of where you should be looking as a company for process and things that we do. One of the key concepts is a product brief. So having product really thoroughly think out what we're developing, what's the persona that and the problem it's solving, who's it for, what are acceptance criteria, just what are you building? That ties to a sprint goal. And then the sprint goal has these tasks, and it could be even cross team that are collaborating. And so with these metrics, we can also look at, is this sprint goal going to make it? Or is it a green, red, or yellow? Like in the time that we've allocated to get this done, do we see that the tasks that are involved in it are actually going to get it to totality and fruition? So
Great. And then just a shameless plug here, Eric wrote his own Python script pulling data from the data sources, built his custom solution. But if you are looking for out-of-box solution, check out, Apache DevLake, the open source project we are working on. It's out-of-box solution for collecting your dev data and then give you the metrics and insights that you need.
that is not shameless, and I was hoping that you would do that. And the only reason that I chose to do it was one, I was bored and I realized that my chops in writing code were sloppy and cobwebby, and I just rely so heavily on Jira and out of the box, and even with some of the Jira marketplace stuff, there just wasn't anything out there that could help me do what I needed to do because we customized Jira so much for this. And so I kind of said before, it's real simple for us with the data. We have story points, but what isn't simple is that we did have to customize Jira. We had to set up custom fields, and that's part of what that script does. Is it looks at those fields and kind of runs that. So.
Absolutely, yeah. There's really no limit in customizing Jira. And I think recently I heard a joke, which is, um, as GPT-5, GPT-6 rolls out and they can do everything, and then GPT-8 actually stumbles upon the question of how to manage my Jira project and ask human for help. I think that's really a really interesting illustration of the complexity in some of the Jira projects that we see.
Well, I think Jira may end up becoming its own GPT. Like it's you just talk to Jira. Jira talks to you. It's like, it's just going to be it's a chatbot soon.
And with that, I want to go back to your point on productionizing LLMs in the reputation management business. So, what are some challenges that you guys see in applying the recent Gen AI technology to your, features running in production? What are some learnings there?
I really our biggest learning right now is going on, and the biggest takeaway is that you can't rush progress. You know, we have this luxury right now where we've got AI to help us make decisions and help us to spot things quicker that maybe were error prone because they were so human centric, right? And now we can start to train models on on data that we have, but with us specifically, and especially in sentiment analysis, um, it's 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 kind of fledgling for us, right? We're it works, but every day it works better. So our learning is that we need to know more and we need to learn more. We need to do more testing. And
Mm,
that's what's the beauty of this is that we can, right? I'm out of my league a little here with ML ops because it's more on Scott's side, but we've fashioned ML ops now, and we're doing every day. We're doing comprehensive, back testing on how our prompts perform, what our prompt finds, what's the success rate on reviews that we're disputing, and every day Dandy's getting better. Every day we're finding more and more reviews are getting successfully disputed with Google, which Google's a bear, right? And that's our bread and butter. At the end of the day, it's their decision, right? It's never a guarantee. But the more work we can do up front, the more clear it is that this review for a merchant actually violates terms of service, the better chance we get. And it's just, you can't, with the volume of that we did last month, we did 30,000 disputes, right?
Mm.
That's a lot. And you can't do that with a human, right? But you also can't do that by rushing it through. So every day over day, that's our learning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think a lot of teams are going through this learning and exploration phase of the Gen AI technology, right? Like understanding the capabilities of those models, building their internal evaluation framework. So besides integrating Gen AI into your product, are you using any AI tools to improve the engineering productivity right now? Is there any tools that you recommend, to our audience?
I mean, we're open AI. That's our tool, right? So we're that's it. That's all we got right now. And then just ML ops to help us continue to learn and test.
hmm How about the dev tool side? Like, do you guys use GitHub Copilot or some similar products?
So, we don't have a mandate. Our team definitely, uses it where need be. We have a pretty rigid, PR process. So, anybody that's putting straight up Chat GPT, Copilot code into, you know, a pull request is going to get probably dinged. But if it's good and it's sensible and it's got tests and it's makes sense, right? Why not? It's the Pareto rule. If I can get 20% of my work to produce 80% of the output, I'm down with that. But what I don't like to see is when people get lazy, right? And start to use Copilot or ChatGPT or anything to start writing code. But I'll tell you, where it's really helpful is for people that maybe haven't, what ChatGPT is really good at? Writing SQL queries,
Mm,
right? And so, SQL queries, it's its own beast, right? And being able to have something help you to properly create joins and put together a query that doesn't run and overload the system. Why not? Why not use that? So what we tell our teams is, hey, where you can use this to produce quicker and better output, go ahead. But um, you know,
yeah, great insights, Eric. So with that, maybe now let's switch over to our rapid fire.
Yeah, Eric, I've got a question for you before we go into that. I wanted to touch on something that you said earlier around patterns, right? So you're a consultant, you're going in and you're working with many different organizations and clients over the course of a year or what have you, and you're really hands-on with these clients. You're spending time with their engineers, improving processes, business outcomes, all that. Since you're going into so many different organizations, what are some of those things that you're seeing over and over again, right? And that's one of the values as a consultant you can provide to a new client. You go to a new client, you're like, I've seen this before, right? You're not alone. I've seen this. This is a common theme that I see in my experience. This is how you fix it. These are some of the lessons learned that I've implemented with other clients. Like, what are some of those patterns at a high level that you've seen, kind of the common issues across your client base?
yeah, I great question. So from top down, I see a lot of organizations that don't have a good product organization. They've got a lot of rapid fire needs and not a lot of thoughtfulness put into what the team needs to build. So we first look at that. Or again, that is garbage in, garbage out. pivoting constantly, if you're not fully fleshing out product ideas and feature ideas, then the team's going to build to that, and you're going to have a mess. Communication is probably the biggest anti-pattern that I see. Right, I see teams just not communicating. I see, and with anything, it's not about intensity; it's about consistency. Right, so I'll see a lot of teams that'll be like, "Oh, today we're going to use Jira and we're going to use GitHub and we're going to use pull requests and we're going to have," and then they do it and then it falls off, right? So they don't have good champions that kind of toe that line in perpetuity, and you have to do that. So I look for that kind of stuff. And then even down to the lowest level of like, code efficacy and quality and consistency. Are your teams committing daily? Do you have people that are, developing on their local box and they haven't committed in 16 days, right? Stuff like that. When I see that those are some of the immediate changes that we put in, because we know that that's the bedrock of a disorganized system. And if we can fix that right away, then you've got other good work to be doing, right? But why? And as my good friend Scott always says, don't sweat on the escalator, right? So make the easy things easy, be consistent, and then you don't have to worry about that. That is just operational, keeping the lights on stuff.
Awesome. Great. And with that, let's switch over to our rapid fire questions. First question, what's your favorite development tool that you can't live without?
My favorite which tool?
Development tool?
My favorite development tool that I can't live without, VS Code.
VS Code. Awesome. Second question, can you recommend a recent book or blog that you came across and found great?
I can. I'll give you one set of area for many blogs, which is SaaStr. I've been a big I've been junking out on SaaStr lately, and there's just so much good stuff because I'm working in a SaaS company. So it's just I'm learning so much stuff, especially around sales and all that fun stuff. The book I'm reading right now is The One Thing by Gary Keller, and that's really about just doing one thing, right? And finding that, so you're not doing many things at once. It's enlightening, because we tend to take on so much cruft with everything being critical, and then you're just constantly doing this. So
Awesome. Last one, if you could only code in one language for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
I'd say Python.
Great. Awesome. So fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and insights with us, Erik. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks, guys. I appreciate what you do, and have a great day.
Yeah, it's been a blast, Erik. Thanks for spending the time with us. Really, really fun. Really appreciate it.
Anytime. I'd love to come back.